Somebody had a big, tall order for us. Oh, Michael Bryant, you're a fellow greener. You were there during the Valentine's riot, which happened in '08. He wants me to produce a 5 minutes of soliloquy on your findings regarding Evergreen State College protests and what you saw this year regarding BLM. Thank you. I am not stupid, but I just need to make sure that I understand what soliloquy means. Soliloquy. An act of speaking one's thoughts aloud when by oneself or regardless of any hearers, especially by a character in a play. Okay, I just want to make sure that it didn't have to be like composed of a certain like rhetorical meter or something like that. Let's concentrate my findings regarding Evergreen State College protests and what you saw this year regarding BLM. I will say this is really the stripped down version of it, is that there's this ideology that is ready to spring when a certain condition presents itself. So it's like a holographic code. You guys remember those CIA videos where agents, like, they got activated when they heard like a key phrase?
Stop. Разведь.
This sounds like a conspiracy theory, but I think that this is how it makes sense because it happens over and over and over again, disassociated from itself in space and time. But it's the same thing that happens over and over again. These kids are programmed to activate and to go into certain form of behavior with certain steps laid out in like this certain process when a certain event occurs. Now, the event usually has to do with the slandering of a sacred category or actual violence committed against a sacred category. This is what you get when you don't understand the religious imagination, which is another way of saying this is what you get when you don't respect group think. When you don't constellate groupthink and give a generation access to thinking and behaving in a group in a planned, beneficial manner, when you take out, and I'm sorry to say this, when you take religion and church out of the lives of a generation, they will restart that. They will find something where they can behave all together, understand what's right and wrong, who's good and bad, and what heaven and hell is, what the world all means, and how to act in the world. And this ideology serves that function to a certain extent within a limited frame of reference. So there is this systemic oppression happening all around us where this one category is suffering constantly that makes up the meaning of our entire universe. That the black body, and this is why they use this language, the black body is a sacred vessel for oppression and pain. And once that black body's pain and oppression come into the space that everybody lives, then everybody snaps into activist mode. That's what happened on large scale with George Floyd. This sacred black body was being subjected to the world's pain. It's kind of like a Christ event where George Floyd died so that all of our sins could be exposed. That snapped the entire world, the entire Western world, and America specifically, into this entire rite. It activated the liturgy, the activist liturgy across the world. Exactly what happened at Evergreen. So what happened at Evergreen is even less important. They lied about the violation of the black body. Certain people that I can name, and I'm not going to name them now, produced the narrative that the black body had been violated. The police had sequestered or detained a black body overnight against their will and denied them the access to a place where they could urinate. All of that was a lie. All of that was a lie. But because everybody was keyed up to that, and because the entire structure of the school had made this category of the black body, I'm using very racist sounding language, but this is their anti-racist language. Secondly, I'm using that language knowing that I'm dehumanizing the actual players. I'm actually showing it as a symbolic liturgy of this sacred rite where everybody comes in and forms one consciousness. So over those 7 days, probably 2 weeks, this massive psychosis occurred. Everybody that was activated by that shared the same consciousness. They were all living living and breathing as one. They were chanting constantly. They all had a perception of reality that was not true. The school itself had rigged this game by actually going out and suppressing facts. The head of student services, India Windress, went around and tore down posters that questioned Black Lives Matter narrative. It was enshrined as a sacred identity and a sacred everything attached to that. That's the most concrete thing to say, to try to push that narrative, or to really kind of bring out the undergirding of a very tired trope. Actually, John McWhorter is writing a book about how anti-racism or wokeness is America's new religion. I want to make that very concrete, is that it is a liturgy. The Black Lives Matter activist activity, where a very particular event that slanders or that oppresses or that kills a Black body sparks an entire, very predictable series of events, starting with actual good actors mobilizing people, the good actors losing control of the narrative and of the behavior, the bad actors coming in, completely demolishing everything in the name of justice. Then there's a bunch of ruination. And then the freaking, this is what gets me, the freaking administration coming in, promising security by tightening down and limiting everybody's freedom of plasticity of thought, with all these trainings and all these boards and bureaus that will allow you to complain on your neighbor. The government's going to come in here, the administration's going to come here, and they're going to solve the problem now. That's basically the three-step process. There's more than that steps, but you have the event, the protest, and then that weird bureaucracy coming in, cementing all these ideas as though they planned it, but they didn't really actually plan it. It's just that's the end goal of like making order of the world. Then you have this really cheesy, really stupid training and priesthood and all this other stuff that comes in and proclaims itself as the church that's going to promote these ideals that everybody needs to have, which is justice and equity and equality and anti-racism, and don't ever argue with us, because this is my current theory that I'm trying to flesh out, is that we are living through a degenerate phase of civil rights. Civil rights was the religion of secular America from the 60s onward. The 1990s had a PC culture, activism was being hashed out in the halls, the hallowed halls of academia, and it was souring in those halls. It was being mixed in with all this postmodern intersectional theory and kind of taking on what would become degenerate activism that was then leaked into the heads of the youth, where you have to do something about all of the systemic problems that have existed forever and that import, that's a cool word play I just came up with. It imports the import of 1960s urgency of activism into the present moment and inflates your ego. It inflates your sense of power and of promise and of necessity to get things done right now. But the actual thing that you're fighting is very nebulous. It's implicit bias. It's under the surface, or it's structural racism. It's way above the surface. But what happened is that 2020 lockdown put those kids that were degenerate activist trained kids into this bottle, and it pressurized them and pressurized them and pressurized them, and the media and Trump and the media and Trump were just feeding this endless cycle of upsetness, of being upset. Then that George Floyd video, and a few days before the George Floyd video, there was a prep for it. There was a run up for it. There's this Karen in the park, right? This Karen in the New York City park threatened to, or actually called the police on a bird watching Black man. And she was totally out of line, right? But then the internet got a hold of that, and they started to do that internet churn where everybody's like surrogately offended by this thing. And then everybody's got to like call out the white people and like call out the Karens, And then the George Floyd thing happened. I mean, God rest his soul, rest in peace, right? I'm talking about a human being, but he's also a historical marker. So I just want to put that in there. We're talking about an actual person who actually died. The circumstances of his death were not cut and dry, but the narrative was there. That little piece of lit tinder was there, and the whole thing erupted. The whole thing erupted. It blew up. And I'm like, this can't be happening. This can't be happening. And then I'm watching these protests. I'm watching people bow to other people based on race. I'm watching white people pray for black people. I'm watching all of this evergreen stuff. Like, all this evergreen stuff happen. I'm like, oh my freaking God, no! The protests themselves, massive amounts of damage, massive waste of resources, massive amount of just empty signaling, right? And like really destructive behavior. That's not what worried me. What worried me was watching critical race theory be right there to just implant itself and take over the discourse, take over the way that we operate, completely insert itself. And a whole bunch of people were absolutely willing to just put their heads into it and become just adult versions of evergreen students, which are worse than the actual students, right? So you go through, this is kind of my point that I try to like make with the documentary. Yes, the way that the kids acted was off the charts insane, but that stuff's not what disturbed me. I mean, it's really disturbing and you're like, oh my God, what's going on, right? And that's what most people are like worried about, or like, that's the stuff that drives people nuts. And obviously there's reasons for that, but it's the way that the adults enabled that. It's the way that the adults put those ideas into the head of the protesters and then coddled them through the whole thing and then just completely destroyed the central purpose of an academic institution. The adults in the room completely betrayed the entire project that they were nominally up to, which is to educate. And I knew that. What I tried to do with the documentary, and I don't know how well I did it, and what I've been trying to do with my work post-Evergreen, like going beyond the Evergreen story, is to really set out this understanding of wokeness or of postmodern activist, this decrepit, this decadent form of activism. What it does is it inserts itself into any institution and it destroys the central purpose of that institution. I think that there's a huge silent majority that will kind of come to the fray. All the radicals will kind of get out of the way. People will stop supporting them because they'll realize that all these training seminars, all this crap that people have to deal with now that is in the name of justice is just a waste of time. Basically, it's a huge belief system that gives you the promise of community, but when you get to that church, when you actually get to the ceremony, there's no art there. The priests actually don't care about you, are not working to love people as themselves. The people at the core of this movement actually will not give you wisdom. This is all bluster and power, and ultimately it will not provide what it's promising, which is community love, right? When you get to the center of it, there's the community was just there to get something done for a very few people who don't love anybody but themselves. I think that they are seeking meaning through being woke. I think people are seeking meaning through these activism, decadent activism, this reboot, but this necrophilic reboot of civil rights. You know, it's really encapsulated in that one moment in the Evergreen footage which is before the protest, where the students go in and they protest this building that's being dedicated to this black man who worked for the college for 20 years, who was the previous president. And R and Lawrence, the two most decadent of all the activists in the entire Evergreen crew, they kind of take over the event, and Les Perce, who's the black president, kind of takes control. He does what George Bridges never did, and he leads, right? He tries to lead.
Dr. King stated that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice.
Dr. King is also dead.
And I think that was not just saying that Martin Luther King is dead. I think that there's another way of saying that their entire movement was a zombie. It was a dead civil rights movement. It was a walking dead, searching for brains, screaming, crying, just like walking through, chanting, like completely disconnected from any sort of higher brain function and eating every higher brain in its path. The symbolic meaning of Martin Luther King is dead that the Evergreen protester said prefigured the decadent civil rights like kind of reboot, this Frankensteinian dead body, like just electrified with panic and fear and narcissism and self-importance, right? Like this movement that was in the name of justice was formed out of like these sodden, decrepit, dead limbs, right? And this is what I do, why I do. It's like, okay, like we're going to face this huge crisis of racial reckoning, right? Okay, that really scares me. It really scares me that we're going to assign white people the label of evil. We're going to do that now. And we are going to bow to this other race and say that they are holy. And that's the attitude. That's the attitude I saw. And I can hear people saying, oh, he's an apologist for the far right, or he's mocking the earnestness of us liberals. We were being very earnest about our bowing and our washing of feet of people. Okay, yeah, you're totally earnest. And I don't mean to take anything away from your sincerity. But there's something very religious about that needs to be critiqued. It's very scary because it's not based on rational. It's not based on rationality. It's based on some sort of religious understanding, and it's anti-liberal. It wants everybody to replicate your sincerity of belief, and it can't countenance any sort of criticism of it. And that's scary. That's really scary. But it's not actually. If you break it down line by line, so many things that scare us. That we kind of take together as some sort of crisis. But if we really honestly go through and just like line by line, look at the stuff that's disturbing us, look at the stuff that's pushing us to be reactive, and deny ourselves that reaction, deny ourselves that moment of disgust, right? Maybe revel in it a little bit. Maybe say, this is really cringy, and I'm going to taste that. And tasting cringe is human, right? It's absolutely human, but not getting addicted to that is divine, is what I'm saying. And the way that we put things and constellate things and ration our way through things, put things into a form of ratio where we put things into perspective and we move around these things and see if they add up. The emotion is just a reaction, but the intuition is me going through and kind of visually representing that and sounding it out in my head and kind of going through this really slow, rhymey way where I'm stumbling through things and I feel it out. And then I get on the other side of it and I can put it into place. So it's not scary anymore. And I think that if I wish anything for 2021 is that more of us learn to deny ourselves reaction and prompt ourselves to engage rationally a little bit more and really kind of come into our own and be adults and kind of swap out that decadent activism for a very sound advocacy. Right? I don't want to put away the project of refining our world. I don't want to put away the reality that people suffer, and it's in all of our best interest to diminish suffering. And you know, doing that, it's a good in itself too. But the activism that's been claiming the attention, and that's been putting itself first and foremost, that's been producing all this cringe, that's been going overboard, that's been pushing all this draconian stuff, right? That won't be countered by another form of decadent activism. It has to be a sound advocacy. It has to be stuff that treats people as human beings and reaches out and knows how to compromise, knows how to play the long game, right? And knows how to lift everybody up into a realm of, I'm sorry to say this, a realm of discursive activity where we see not eye to eye, but we kind of see each other shape to shape. We kind of see the human in each other, and we hyphenate, or we not hyphenate, we underscore that humanity in every one of us. And we really evoke that humanity in every one of us. And when people go through and start to dehumanize things, we we react in such a way where we cancel their force in such a way, in a judo way. Yeah, a cancel culture that's made out of that. Is it judo? The one where you use everybody's forces against them, right? Where you just kind of recycle the energy, like that kind of cancellation, which isn't cancellation, it's conversion, right? It's a national conversion therapy, converting all that muck and all that negative stuff. All that negative stuff, bit by bit, converting that into something that's much more useful for one and all. That was my prayer for 2021, that we grow the F up.